All right. So this launches what's called the Age of Discovery. All right. Uh, Lots of need for new markets and resources. Religious upheaval in Europe. So there's this thing called the Protestant Reformation. Not sure. Hopefully this registers with you in from world history, from whenever that was. If you had me, we talked about it in detail. So to simplify, everybody in Europe, I say everybody, speaking in broad terms, 90+% of the people in Europe are Christian. All right. The problem with the Christians in Europe is they've started to infight for a couple hundred years now. So it used to be if you're a Christian, everybody was Catholic. Well, then some people didn't like the way the Catholic Church was doing things, but they still wanted to be Christian. So they broke off and made their own versions of churches. You have Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterians, just anything that is Christian that's not Catholic is called Protestant. Europe starts trying to dictate what church people can go to, their own version of the church, whether it's Catholic or the Church of England or something like that. Really, what you just need to understand for this course is that a lot of people wanted to be Christian a certain way in Europe, and it wasn't allowed. And people felt very strongly that they wanted to be allowed to worship a certain way. One of the things that the New World is going to allow for people to do is if they decide to leave Europe and come over to the New World, they're allowed to worship however they want. So that is a big carrot dangling in front of a lot of people that we'll start talking about this unit in coming over here. So the Protestant Reformation, basically reforming Protestant means you're protesting the Catholic Church. This type of stuff is the situation in which is going to motivate people to come over here. But that's specifically talking about England that we will get to. The very first people that are going to come over, not surprisingly, are going to be the Spanish. All right. The Spanish are going to come over because, again, Spain, most powerful navy on earth with the Spanish Armada. Nobody wants to tick off Spain because you don't want to get in a naval battle with them. All right. So Spain gets first dibs. When Spain shows up, their first groups are really going to be their military because they're going to come over and see what cool stuff they can just take from the existing civilizations that are over here. But on a larger scale here, and this basically spans the rest of colonization, once they discover these two continents, North and South America, there are, with rare exception, all right, there are 3 reasons why people would come over here. 3, all right? And they're called the 3 G's. God, gold, and glory. God means religious freedom, all right? And you're going to see a lot of that when we start talking about the Puritans and the Pilgrims and the Separatists and things like that that are going to be coming over to what is present-day America near Boston and the Massachusetts Bay Colony. So that's what God is people coming here for religious freedom, all right, to worship the way they want. So people are coming over for God. There's one of the G's, God. Next one is gold. Gold is crazy expensive. Everybody wants it. There's this whole new world that they have a bunch of gold. And actually down in what is present-day Mexico and South America, they realize there's these civilizations called the Aztecs and Incas that actually have a good bit of gold. And the Spaniards, their eyes get really big. They want it. They want to come take the gold that's over here in the New World and take it back to Spain and spend it. So that's so it's either people coming over here because they want to worship how they want. They want to come over here to get rich. So gold kind of means rich. There's other ways of getting rich. We'll talk about tobacco in future lessons. And then glory. This is like Christopher Columbus. He wanted to be the first guy. He wanted to be famous. He wanted the glory of having to do this. You're going to see Sir Walter Raleigh, as we'll talk about, who funds a whole bunch of, or puts a whole bunch of money together to try to fund these colonies. He's the type of guy whose motivation is glory of wanting to have his name out there. So these are the three G's: gold, God, God, gold, and glory are the 3 main reasons why people would be coming over here at the time. So the question here is, what are the 3 G's and what is an example of what each means? So make sure you answer these in complete sentences. So you should be answering these as we go through. Two screens is great if you have it, or you make me small, or the video small, and your worksheet on the side of it as you answer it. Make sure you answer these. If I'm just going to make sure when I see these that I've discussed them and moving on. If you don't have it, again, I'm a video. Pause me and then go through and answer these. All right. Impact of Columbus. So Columbus absolutely, fundamentally is going to change the world. He's going to be dead before he realizes it. But because he figured out and was the first guy to come across, it opens up trade between North and South America and Europe. The North and South America is referred to as the New World. Tons of things are going to start changing. You're going to have what's called the Columbian Exchange. All these people are going to start coming over here and trading and shipping that stuff back to England. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to show up in the New World that had never existed in the New World before. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to show up in Europe that has never existed in Europe before. So today we've really just talked about mainly the Spanish coming in. We'll talk about the English and the French and all that here in later lessons. This is very important though. I want to point this out. So this is the millions of individuals. Let me get myself up here out of the corner. All right. You notice the Indian people come straight down. I mean, it is from 1600 to 1800. You go from 7 million people to less than 2 million people while the colonists show up. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. There's war, there's stuff like that, but there's a lot of disease. Disease is just devastating for the Native Americans. Even once the Europeans realize the disease is devastating to Native Americans, instead of being like, oh, we don't want to infect you, they start, in certain situations, purposely infecting them with stuff like smallpox in order to eradicate an entire race of people. There's no way you can explain this without acknowledging that it was a genocide of an entire race of people. So as the population is going to grow, as you can see these green lines, the total population is going to start showing up. The actual population of the Native Americans is just going to get destroyed over really the course of this course. We'll talk more and more about how the Native American population just gets pushed aside and just annihilated. All right, so these are some of the things that went from, like, with the Columbian Exchange is what it's called, where the two sides interact with each other, named after Columbus, who basically found this trade route. So this is stuff that goes from Europe to the New World that had never existed. A lot of diseases. Smallpox, measles, chickenpox, malaria, yellow fever, the flu, the cold. All right, all of that goes from Europe over to the New World, and Native Americans had never had to deal with these things before. Syphilis goes from the sexually transmitted disease goes from the New World, which was, I wouldn't say common, but it existed among Native American populations, over to Europe. Animals. These are animals that never existed. So Native Americans had never seen horses, cattle, pigs, sheep, goats, or chickens. Had never seen those, much less eaten them. So, and then Europe had never seen turkeys, llamas, alpacas, and guinea pigs. There's just so many crazy things that exist. So there are positive and negative outcomes of it. You have diseases, but you also have new stuff like, think about this. Where am I at? All right, so chocolate, the plant of chocolate comes from North America. All right. However, sugar comes from Europe. Prior to Christopher Columbus, nobody had ever had chocolate. Now, they had cocoa, but having chocolate mixed with sugar is how we eat it. Didn't exist until a few hundred years ago. Imagine life without chocolate. It's crazy. All right, there's another really interesting story that's worth telling here, and it's really neat, and you'll like this. So tomatoes. Tomatoes are from the New World and go over to Europe. However, if you've ever seen, I don't know, shows or movies or cartoons where somebody's up on stage and they're doing bad and people start throwing tomatoes at them from the audience, all right? So the where that comes from is back in this time period. The poor people, and it's really messed up. The poor people in Europe thought that the tomatoes were poison. So when they would throw them at people, all right, it was like trying to throw poison at them. Right now, here's why they thought it was poison, and they thought it was only designed to kill poor people, because rich people would eat tomatoes all the time in Europe, and nothing bad ever happened to them. However, when poor people tried to eat tomatoes over in Europe, they would get sick and they would die horrible deaths. It seemed like, and it was not uncommon. And they're like, "Oh my gosh!" So everybody started believing that tomatoes were poison. What was actually happening is that people were using these really low grade metal plates that were made out of iron. If you were poor, that's what you ate off of. The acidity that is in a tomato, when they would slice it up and put it on that iron plate, it would absorb the iron and the really bad stuff you don't want in your body into the tomato. And then they would eat the tomato, and they were actually getting sick from their plates, all right? Not the actual tomato. And rich people wouldn't use those poor people plates, so they weren't getting sick like that. But it took them a while to figure out why people were dying after eating tomatoes. But that for a long time in Europe, tomatoes were thought to be poison because that was happening. And so this is a really interesting amount of animals and things that showed up in Europe, from Europe into the New World. When people show up on horses, riding horses blows the minds of the Native Americans down here. I mean, there's no other animal. Just think about, like, there's no other animal you can ride. Like, and it's cool with it. Like, you can go grab an ostrich, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what animals you can grab, but they're not cool with it. All right, a horse is. So it just blew the minds of the natives. And the horse itself, once it comes over into the New World, becomes so popular over here that it really spreads and is going to change a lot of the lives of the Native Americans, the Great Plains Indians that follow the buffalo. It will fundamentally change a lot of their life. All right. So what were some of the positive and negative outcomes of the Columbus Exchange? We had talked about that. Go through, answer that in complete sentences. So we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about Spain, who, because of the Spanish Armada and had the most powerful navy around, they are the ones that got to call dibs on the New World. So we're going to talk about when they're the first ones over here. Now, there's millions of people already here, but the Spanish are more dominant. A lot of because of their military is vastly superior with guns, and men on horseback is drastically superior to any type of military grade weapons that the Aztecs and Incas will have when they come over here. So we're going to talk about specifically today how the Spanish, who were the first Europeans over here, interacted with the new groups. Let me make myself smaller here. Alrighty. Put myself over here in the corner. Alright. So, the Portuguese, and we're going to talk about here, Portugal and Spain kind of are on the same landmass. So we're going to focus mainly on Spain here, but we will mention some of Portugal and their work with Spain as well. All right. So Spain comes over here, and they basically have first dibs. When Spain shows up in the New World, they are not in any way looking to come over here and make friends. They're like, found a new area? Do they have stuff that we want? Let's go rob them. I mean, that's 100% what it is. From one group after another, they're going to show up and just wreck shop in the New World. So, I got some pictures here that help explain it. So, they're going to send these guys out, and there's really no good place for me to stick myself. Just, I'll put it up here. So, this is Hernando Cortez and the Aztecs. So these guys are called conquistadors. The guys are getting ready to talk about. So this is going to be down in Mexico, all right? What is present day Mexico? So Cortez is going to show up, and he's on horse. Now, Montezuma, here, the Aztecs, is a really intricate and really awesome story that we can't spend as much time on as I wish we could. So Montezuma is the leader of the Aztecs down here who has gold, and the Spanish see it, so they're going to send in old Cortez here to take it. So there's like a prophecy here at the time that in this exact year, there's supposed to be like a light-skinned people show up, and they're going to be like demigods. And the chances of that happening, of having this prophecy, and then the Spanish show up who are lighter skinned. Like, I think this picture does a good job of, showing the contrast of skin tone. So it's definitely a different race of people that show up that are lighter skinned than the Aztecs, and they're on horseback. All right. Nobody had ever seen a horse. You have an animal that you're riding around on. Like, this has never been seen in the New World. So immediately they think this guy is like bigger than life, like a demigod. And Cortez is like, yeah, like he's not going to dissuade them from thinking that. So he shows up. He ends up finding ways of organizing against Montezuma. He ends up, there's a whole bunch of big battles happen. Smallpox ravages tons of people here that get presented, and early on they realize that it is devastating to the native population here. There are entire cities that just get destroyed. But eventually, all right, as much as I'd like to go through about taking Montezuma hostage and rallying all the other smaller tribes against Montezuma, Cortez is going to win. It's a big, bloody, awful battle that Cortez is going to win, and he's going to be able to take all the gold. That is an ongoing theme you're going to see here when the Spanish show up. They're showing up to fight. So after Cortez and the Aztecs, down in South America, there's Pizarro, another conquistador, as these guys were called. I don't think I already said that. They're like conquerors, basically. That's who Spain sends, the military. They're not sending people to be nice. They're sending them to go fight and bring back gold. Like of the three G's, God, gold, and glory, Spain's here for gold. So the next guy that shows up, and they overlap some, is Pizarro, who's going to show up in South America for the and fight the Incas. Again, it's over gold. So this here, Pizarro shows up, fights the Incas, wipes them out, looking for gold. Again, notice these are soldiers that they're sending over. They're not coming over here to be friends. So Spain shows up very aggressively. So the first interaction that any of the natives are going to have in the New World with Europeans is not a positive interaction. All right, absolutely just brutal here. De Soto. This guy goes down to Florida. As crazy as this sounds, the Spanish hold on to Florida for a really long time because they believe that Florida has, wait for it, the fountain of youth. And they literally search Florida for years and years, for centuries, looking for the fountain of youth, still thinking it might be there. I'm not sure exactly what their logic was, but they thought the mystical fountain of youth was in Florida. Obviously, it's not. I mean, maybe that's why so many people were retired down to Florida, because they think fountain of youth might still be there. Old people joke. I'm getting closer. All right. So, but again, here, De Soto, he's in Florida. You can tell by the helmets, this is the military that's showing up. The next guy, Coronado in New Mexico and Arizona, as they go through Mexico, what is present day Mexico, with the Aztecs and spread further north. You can, again, see here, you can tell by the helmets, this is the military that is showing up. The Spain shows up. They're not trying to be nice. They're not trying to be friends. They're here to drop hammers on people. All right. So again, the very first interaction with people is dealing a lot with this idea that we're going to take what we want, and we're not here to be friends. So there's hostility between the natives and the very first Europeans. All right, so here's a map. Now, there is a line that gets drawn with Portugal down the center here. All right, so Portugal is this little green area right here. And so they draw a line here, and they're going to let Portugal have anything that's on this side of the line. So that is why on this side of the line, you're going to have what is present day Brazil here in South America. And that's why Brazil speaks Portuguese. Because anything on this side, you know what, let me draw a line. Duh. Man, that's a really bad line. I'm going to draw it again because I can. All right, so not my best line. But anything on this side of the line, Portugal got to have. That was the deal with Spain. All right, so that is why Spain is going to take over Brazil. Now, the logistics of them spreading in here had to do with rivers and stuff. But so this is why Brazil, present day, their language they speak is Portuguese. You can basically tell what European country took over what area back then at this time based on what language they speak. So, like Brazil speaks Portuguese today. They were taken over by Portugal. All the purple areas, that's present day Mexico, Central America, much of South America, they speak Spanish. All right, in large part today. So you can tell that they were taken over by Spain. It's the easiest way of telling. Like eventually you get to England having taken over this area, and we'll get to that more tomorrow. And the predominant language here in America is English. And then in Canada, there's going to be some squabbling between England and France. And to present day, they speak a combination of English and French. All right. So, but the conquistadors come over and just dominated this area. They're not really looking to stay. I mean, they're probably setting up some trading posts, but they're coming over, there's just soldiers coming over. There's no families, there's no nothing like that coming over. These are soldiers coming over to fight and take what they want. Once they get their gold, they're heading back to Europe to spend that in Europe. So the question here is, why did the Spanish send more militant explorers to America rather than settlers? Well, it had to do with what they wanted. And with what they wanted, settlers weren't going to get them what they wanted. So we had discussed that. So make sure you go through and answer these. As always, feel free to pause me. All right, I am very pausable. Answer those and then move on. So this is going to lead to triangular trade, and this is very famous. So I say it leads to it because this is. Once the Spanish start bringing slaves to the New World and see African slaves from West Africa, when they start bringing them to the New World and they see how successful they are, meaning they don't die, then as England and these other countries start becoming committed to creating colonies in the New World, they're also going to commit to the African slaves. So here is what is called the triangular trade. All right. So it's going to start here. So right here in England, if you have a ship, and we're going to say his name is Billy. Show you how old Billy here. So Billy's ship here, all right, say he's going to start out, and he's got a ship, and he's got $5,000. We're just going to make up a random amount of number. A random number here. You know what's better than $5,000? $50,000, like just more. So what he's going to do is Billy's going to take his ship, and I'm going to completely make up these numbers here. But understand my logic at the end. So he's going to take his empty ship up here in England, all right, eventually, and he's going to take $5,000 and he's going to fill his ship with. Rum is really common. Guns are also very common. He's going to spend all $5,000 on all the guns that he can possibly get, and rum. And he's going to go from England down here to West Africa. Now, this is called triangular trade because it's going to make a triangle. It means it has three sides. All right. So there's three legs. This here, right there. Let me make that bigger. Boop, 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 boop. Boom. All right. So from England, oh yeah, down here, all right, that is the first leg that is going to exist on what's called the triangular trade. And it is, you are taking stuff from England down to West Africa, and what he's going to do with those guns and that rum is he is going to trade that for slaves in Africa. So he's going to find tribes that have captured other tribes, all right? And he is going to pay them in guns and rum. Those are two of the most common universal. You showed up with guns and rum, you're going to get yourself slaves somehow in West Africa at the time. And so he would trade it off for humans here in Europe. Now, the second part of this trip is the most messed up one, and just all of slavery is just deplorable. But the Middle Passage from the beginning shows how little value humans had for other humans. All right. So they're going to put humans on ships, slaves, and ship them over here. The vast majority of the time they're going to go to the Caribbean, all right, which will then be sold and would make their way through the whole region. This is called the Middle Passage. All right. As they come through. So it comes down to how many slaves can you buy. So here's what's messed up. And this is all right, I'll just tell you. So some of the slaves are going to die on their way over here. So you got a ship, you can hold 100 slaves, all right? If you put 100 slaves on there, 95 will probably survive when they come over. You know what? Maybe we'll say all 100 will survive if they show up in the New World, all right? However, if you pack 170 on that ship that's only supposed to hold 100, 50 of them are going to die. However, you put 170 on there and 50 die, how many do you have when you show up here in the New World? 120. What's more, 100 or 120? Literally, they pack human beings on these ships knowing they're going to die just so that they can have enough that survive over here. If they put less on the ships, all of them would survive. But they purposely choose not to for a profit. They can choose not to let them die, or at least not in the numbers. And it is Middle Passage, and it is just the whole world, because the whole world takes part in this at this time, all right? Or at least Europe does. Looks back on this, and it is, the Middle Passage is the second leg, and it's just absolutely horrific. All right, so first leg down, he starts at 5,000, fills it up with slaves, and comes over here and drops them off. He sells them over here. He makes $500,000, $500,000 over here when he comes over here to the Caribbean, and he sells them over here in the Caribbean. So he started out at 5,000. Now he has $500,000. You know what's better than $500,000? More money. So instead of just coming back here, all right, automatically, he is going to come over to the New World, and he's probably going to take all 500,000 of that dollars, and he is going to buy some of the most important stuff that you can make a bunch of money off of, specifically stuff like tobacco. Tobacco is very, very popular at the time. So he will load up all the tobacco that he can here, and we'll talk about when that becomes popular here in the next couple lessons. And he will go all the way back filled with that tobacco. He gets back, sells that tobacco for $2 million. Billy started out with $5,000. Did one triangular trade trip, ended up with $2 million. Billy just got rich. Took him about maybe a year of his life, but he's rich. How many people do you think want to do this? Do you think there's a market here for a lot of people wanting to do this? Is there plenty of people willing to shuttle these slaves across the center of this very dangerous Middle Passage in order to become wealthy? Absolutely. And the Middle Passage, because it was such a unique situation to get rich, people just absolutely went to the depravity of human nature in order to ship other humans across the Middle Passage here. So let me get rid of that. I have a little 4-minute video here that does a good job of reenacting some of the stuff on the Middle Passage and just how awful it could be. So this is the slave trade, and that it was absolutely coming over here. So it looks like all the slaves are going here to the West Indies, which is the Caribbean, and absolutely, but then they will work their way from here up north. So it's not, they don't. The question here is, what was the Middle Passage and why was it so bad? So answer this one in complete sentences, and I will see you guys tomorrow.